Rasputin survived poison, bullets, and icy cold water, but what ultimately extinguished the notorious mystic's life was the sheer, brutal determination of men who believed he held their nation's destiny in his unnerving grip. He was strangled, bludgeoned, shot repeatedly, and then submerged beneath a frozen river. Yet, even in death, his legend of invulnerability would only begin to truly solidify, a dark prophecy echoing the tragic end of the Romanov dynasty itself. The year was 1916. Petrograd, the glittering imperial capital of Russia, seethed with discontent. World War I was a grinding, bloody catastrophe, draining the country of its young men and its meager resources. Famine loomed, strikes flared, and whispers of revolution grew louder with each passing day. At the heart of this volatile storm, an unlikely figure cast an enormous, unsettling shadow: Grigori Rasputin, the Mad Monk. A Siberian peasant, unkempt, charismatic, and with eyes that seemed to bore into the very soul, Rasputin had, against all odds, captivated the imperial family. His hold over Tsarina Alexandra in particular was absolute, born from his apparent ability to stem the bleeding of her hemophiliac son, Alexei, the heir to the throne. This peasant's unprecedented influence over the most powerful family in Russia enraged the aristocracy, baffled the church, and terrified anyone who saw the crumbling empire teetering on the brink. They believed Rasputin was not merely a charlatan, but a demonic force poisoning the Tsar's judgment and dragging Russia towards ruin. He had to be removed. The conspirators who plotted Rasputin's downfall were not revolutionaries, but pillars of the establishment. Prince Felix Yusupov, the immensely wealthy and flamboyant heir to one of Russia's most ancient families. Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, a cousin of the Tsar himself. Vladimir Purishkevich, a firebrand ultra-conservative member of the Duma, Russia's parliament. And a young military doctor named Stanislaus Lavavert. For months, these men had watched with escalating horror as Rasputin's debauched lifestyle and political meddling intensified. They saw him as the root of all evil plaguing Russia, a national disgrace whose continued existence threatened to unravel the very fabric of their society. Their motives were complex, a twisted blend of patriotism, class snobbery, religious fervor, and a profound, almost visceral disgust. They genuinely believed they were saving Russia, making a terrible but necessary sacrifice. The plan was audacious, chillingly intricate. Prince Yusupov, with his youthful charm and aristocratic allure, was tasked with luring Rasputin to his magnificent Moika Palace on the night of December 16, 1916. The bait: an invitation to meet Yusupov's famously beautiful wife, Princess Irina Alexandrovna, whom Rasputin was known to admire. However, Princess Irina was not even in Petrograd. She was vacationing in Crimea, oblivious to the macabre drama unfolding in her name. The palace itself, a sprawling masterpiece of Baroque architecture, with its opulent rooms and hidden nooks, would become the stage for one of history's most bizarre and brutal assassinations. Yusupov intended to isolate Rasputin in a secluded basement room, far from prying eyes and the potential noise of struggle. As the chosen night approached, the conspirators meticulously prepared their macabre setting. The basement room in Yusupov's palace was decorated to appear as a cozy, intimate lounge, complete with rich velvet furnishings and precious art. But amidst the luxury, a darker purpose lay hidden. Cyanide, a potent and fast-acting poison, had been acquired from Dr. Lazavert. This deadly agent was then carefully kneaded into a selection of small, ornate cakes, his favorite sweet, and dissolved into glasses of Madeira wine, a dark, heavy, fortified drink Rasputin particularly enjoyed. The room's only other occupant would be a large carved crucifix, perhaps a morbid irony, watching over the impending act of violence. The conspirators, waiting upstairs, listened to a gramophone playing Yankee Doodle, a bizarre and unsettling soundtrack to their murderous vigil. Rasputin, ever the creature of habit, was late. He arrived at the Moika Palace in the early hours of December 17th, bundled against the brutal Russian winter, with a curious, almost childlike excitement about meeting the fabled Princess Irina. Yusupov, playing the genial host, led him down to the basement. The air was thick with tension, though Rasputin, seemingly oblivious, spoke animatedly about his spiritual visions and prophecies. Yusupov offered him the poisoned cakes. With an unsettling calm, Rasputin consumed them, one after another, then moved on to the poisoned wine. The conspirators, listening intently from upstairs, imagined the scene, the mystic, convulsing, dying quickly as planned. But the agonizing minutes stretched into an hour, 2 hours. From their hidden vantage point, they heard only the steady drone of conversation, interrupted by occasional loud bursts of laughter from Rasputin. A cold dread began to seep into Yusupov's heart. What would you have done in that terrifying basement, believing a man was dead, only for him to spring back to life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The scene below was increasingly surreal. Rasputin, far from succumbing, appeared completely unaffected. He munched on cyanide-laced cakes as if they were harmless pastries and downed poisoned wine without a flicker of distress. Yusupov later described the man's terrifying vitality, his eyes seeming to glow with an inner fire. Panic gnawed at the prince. He excused himself, rejoining his co-conspirators upstairs, his face pale, his composure shattered. "The poison isn't working," he exclaimed, his voice barely a whisper. "He's eating them, he's drinking them, he's singing." The others, equally bewildered, urged him to act. Purishkevich, the politician, handed Yusupov a revolver, a cold, heavy object in his trembling hand. The elegant, refined prince, who had never before harmed a fly, was now tasked with a raw act of brutal violence. Armed with the pistol, Yusupov descended once more into the basement. He engaged Rasputin in conversation, asking him to look at an ornate crucifix, perhaps hoping to appeal to some lingering shred of piety. As Rasputin turned, admiring the carving, Yusupov raised the revolver and fired. The shot ripped through the quiet room, striking Rasputin in the back just below the shoulder blade. The mystic crumpled to the floor, a gurgling sound escaping his lips, blood blooming rapidly on his shirt. Yusupov, adrenaline coursing through him, felt a wave of triumph mixed with profound horror. He dropped the gun, staring at the seemingly lifeless body. The conspirators rushed down, a mixture of relief and grim satisfaction on their faces. They checked for a pulse. Nothing. They declared him dead, the unkillable demon finally vanquished. But the legend of Rasputin's astonishing resilience was about to be born in the most terrifying way imaginable. As the conspirators discussed how to dispose of the body, Yusupov returned to the basement for a final macabre check. He prodded the body with his foot. Suddenly, with a gasp that echoed like a death rattle from another world, Rasputin's eyes flew open. He bolted upright, his gaze fixed on Yusupov with an expression of pure, unadulterated fury. The prince shrieked, scrambling backward. Rasputin, incredibly, lunged at him, grabbing his shoulder, his strength seemingly undiminished, his voice a hoarse, demonic whisper. You will hang." The other conspirators, hearing Yusupov's screams, rushed downstairs to witness the impossible, the dead man, resurrected, grappling with their leader. The scene devolved into utter chaos.
Rasputin, despite the gunshot wound, fought with a desperate, animalistic strength. He broke free from Yusupov's grasp and lumbered up the palace stairs, towards the courtyard and the open gates, a terrifying, blood-soaked phantom bellowing into the night. Purishkevich, the politician, reacted with a mixture of terror and decisive action. He grabbed his own Browning pistol and pursued the fleeing mystic. "Felix, run, run!" he cried, chasing Rasputin through the snow-covered courtyard. He fired once, missing. He fired again, the bullet tearing through Rasputin's back. The mystic stumbled, falling near the gate, but continued to crawl, a grotesque, unstoppable figure. Purishkevich fired a third time, the shot striking Rasputin in the head, near his temple. This time, the mystic collapsed completely, lying motionless in the frigid snow. The conspirators gathered around the prostrate form, their hearts pounding, their minds reeling. Had they truly, finally stopped him? Doubts, born from the earlier failed poison and miraculous revival, lingered. To ensure there would be no third resurrection, they began to inflict further, brutal violence. Accounts vary, but it's believed they kicked and bludgeoned the body. Some reports suggesting a heavy club or dumbbell was used to smash his head and face. They tied his legs and arms with ropes, ensuring he could not rise again. The brutalization continued, driven by a primal fear that this man, this peasant mystic, was truly indestructible. The sheer physical resistance Rasputin had displayed, surviving enough cyanide to kill an army, shrugging off a point-blank gunshot, and then fighting like a demon, had driven his killers to a frenzy of panic and extreme violence. They bound his limbs tightly, wrapped his body in a heavy blue curtain, and then, fearing the body might still somehow escape, they attached heavy iron weights to him. The next inevitable step was to dispose of the body in a place where it would never be found, erased from memory, just as they hoped his influence would be erased from Russia. If you're gripped by these stories of figures who faced death in such dramatic fashion, consider subscribing. We unravel the final moments of history's most compelling characters every week. The conspirators loaded Rasputin's weighted body into a car. The biting winter air cut through their fur coats as they drove to the Petropovsky Bridge, which spanned the Neva River. The river, a dark, churning ribbon through the heart of Petrograd, was already freezing over, a testament to the unforgiving Russian winter. At a predetermined spot, a hole had been cut in the thick ice, specifically for this grim purpose. It was a desolate, lonely place. The only sounds the creak of the ice, the whisper of the wind, and the ragged breaths of the conspirators. With a final, shared effort, they heaved the heavily bound body over the railing and into the black, icy depths below. A muffled splash, then silence. The Neva, cold and indifferent, swallowed Rasputin whole, seemingly bringing an end to the mad monk's reign of chaos. For 2 days, the river held its secret. The conspirators, though initially relieved, grew increasingly uneasy. Rumors began to circulate, fueled by Rasputin's missing cap found near the bridge. Fear gripped them once more. Finally, on December 19th, a group of workmen discovered the body caught beneath the ice, downstream from the bridge. The sight was horrific. Rasputin's face was disfigured from the beating, his body still bound, his right arm unnaturally raised, as if reaching for freedom. The subsequent autopsy revealed the chilling truth about Rasputin's final moments, a detail that cemented his legend more than any poison or bullet could. The medical examination, conducted by Dr. Dmitry Kosorotov, revealed no water in his stomach, confirming that the ingested cyanide had not killed him. However, his lungs were filled with water.
This meant, beyond any doubt, that Grigori Rasputin was still alive when he plunged into the icy Neva. He had survived the poison. He had survived the multiple gunshot wounds, including the one to his head, which was not immediately fatal, and he had survived the brutal beating. His right arm, the autopsy noted, was raised and bent at the elbow, suggesting a desperate, final struggle to untie the ropes that bound him, to free himself from his watery tomb.
The cause of death was hypothermia, exacerbated by the shock of the freezing water and drowning. He had, quite literally, frozen and drowned, slowly and painfully, while attempting to escape his bonds beneath the river's surface. The discovery of his body ignited an immediate storm of public reaction. News of Rasputin's death, though officially suppressed, spread like wildfire through Petrograd and beyond. The public was divided. Many rejoiced, believing a national curse had been lifted, while his few remaining loyal followers mourned. The imperial family, particularly the Tsarina, was devastated. She refused to believe the official story, convinced that her holy man had been martyred. The conspirators initially managed to avoid severe punishment, given the widespread public sentiment against Rasputin. But their actions had irrevocably damaged the fragile stability of the Romanov dynasty. The murder itself, carried out by members of the highest aristocracy, exposed the deep fissures within Russian society, highlighting the contempt the nobility held for the Tsar's judgment and his peasant advisor. A morte de Rasputin, contudo, longe de ser bálsamo para as feridas do império, provou ser o catalisador final para sua dissolução. Os conspiradores, com seu ato brutal e calculado, pensavam estar extirpando câncer do coração da Rússia, mas, na verdade, arrancaram a única âncora que, por mais frágil que fosse, ainda prendia os Romanovs à realidade. A tsarina Alexandra, mergulhada em luto sombrio, viu a morte de seu homem santo como sinal inequívoco da perdição iminente. Ela se isolou ainda mais, apegando-se a uma fé cada vez mais mística e distante das necessidades prementes de povo faminto e desiludido. Para ela, Rasputin não era charlatão, mas mártir, e sua ausência deixava vácuo espiritual e político que ninguém poderia preencher. O pouco que restava de credibilidade à família imperial desmoronou completamente. O assassinato expôs a chocante disfunção da corte russa. Se membros da mais alta nobreza, incluindo parente do Tsar, sentiam que a única solução para o rumo catastrófico do país era o homicídio, que esperança restava? Não foi ato de salvação, mas grito desesperado que ecoou a fragilidade do trono. A imagem da monarquia, já manchada pela guerra e pela pobreza, ficou irremediavelmente quebrada. Aqueles que antes veneravam ou temiam Rasputin, agora viam sua morte como presságio, uma cortina que se abria para revelar a podridão que se escondia por trás dos esplendores do Palácio de Inverno. Poucas semanas após sua morte, a profecia de Rasputin começou a se concretizar de forma assustadora. Ele teria escrito ao Tsar Nicolau II em uma carta premonitória, afirmando que, se ele fosse morto por plebeus, o Tsar não precisaria se preocupar, pois seu reinado continuaria. Mas se fosse morto por nobres, a família imperial não duraria mais de 2 anos e a Rússia se afundaria em caos de sangue e violência. A verdade é que a nobreza foi a responsável e o destino da dinastia Romanov estava selado. O ar de Petrogrado, já carregado com o cheiro de carvão, pão velho e medo, agora parecia ter novo odor, o da revolução iminente. As greves se intensificaram, os protestos contra a guerra e a fome se tornaram diários e cada vez mais violentos.
A autoridade do Tsar, esvaziada pela sua própria incapacidade de governar e pela percepção de que ele era uma marionete, deixou de existir. Em fevereiro de 1917, apenas 2 meses e meio após o corpo de Rasputin ser retirado do Neva, a Revolução de Fevereiro eclodiu. Não foi levante orquestrado, mas uma explosão espontânea de desespero e raiva. As pessoas saíram às ruas em massa, não apenas em Petrogrado, mas por toda a Rússia. Os soldados que deveriam reprimir os protestos, em muitos casos, juntaram-se a eles. O próprio Tsar Nicolau II foi forçado a abdicar em março, encerrando mais de 300 anos de domínio Romanov.
O vácuo de poder resultante foi preenchido por um governo provisório, mas a semente da discórdia já havia sido plantada, e a radicalização viria em seguida. A ironia final reside no fato de que Rasputin, o homem que muitos acusaram de destruir a monarquia, pode ter sido, paradoxalmente, a última peça que a mantinha, ainda que de forma precária, em funcionamento. Sua presença caótica e sua influência imprevisível obscureciam os verdadeiros problemas sistêmicos da autocracia russa. Com sua morte, a cortina de fumaça desapareceu, revelando a crueza de um regime falido, incapaz de se adaptar ou de responder às demandas de seu povo. Aqueles que o assassinaram acreditavam estar cortando a cabeça de uma hidra, mas acabaram por decapitar a própria esperança de estabilidade. Se a história de como a morte de um homem pode desenterrar a verdade mais feia de uma nação te cativa, deixe o seu like. Isso ajuda o canal a trazer mais histórias como esta para aqueles que buscam compreender os abismos do passado. A lenda de Rasputin, porém, não morreu com ele. Pelo contrário, sua figura cresceu, transformando-se em um mito. Para alguns, ele se tornou um símbolo da resiliência russa, um homem do povo que desafiou a elite. Para outros, ele permaneceu o demônio, o feiticeiro que corrompeu a pura alma da Rússia e trouxe sua queda. Sua imagem, com seus olhos penetrantes e barba desgrenhada, adornava cartões postais, livros e filmes, muito depois de seu desaparecimento físico. Relatos de sua indestrutibilidade continuaram a ser contados, alimentando a narrativa de um homem quase sobrenatural, alguém que dançou com a morte e a enganou repetidamente antes de finalmente ser levada por ela, não por um único golpe, mas por uma combinação implacável dos elementos e da determinação humana. O corpo de Rasputin, após ser exumado por tropas revolucionárias que temiam que seu túmulo pudesse se tornar um local de peregrinação contra-revolucionária, foi queimado em uma floresta próxima. Suas cinzas, espalhadas ao vento, simbolizavam o fim de uma era e o início de outra, mais brutal e impiedosa. Mas a chama de sua lenda, como um fogo-fato, nunca se apagou. Sua história se tornou um aviso, um conto sobre o perigo do poder não controlado, da fé cega e das consequências imprevisíveis quando o destino de uma nação é manipulado nos corredores escuros de um império em colapso. A Rússia sem Rasputin não encontrou a paz prometida por seus assassinos. Em vez disso, mergulhou ainda mais fundo na turbulência, culminando na Revolução de Outubro e na ascensão dos bolcheviques. O sangue derramado no Neva foi apenas o primeiro gotejar de uma torrente que engolfaria milhões de vidas e mudaria o curso da história global. O homem que sobreviveu a veneno, balas e a água congelante finalmente sucumbiu a algo mais do que seus agressores físicos. Ele sucumbiu ao peso insuportável da história que ele mesmo, sem intenção, ajudou a rodar. Sua morte não foi o fim de um problema, mas a abertura de um abismo. Mas afinal, era Rasputin um profeta de Deus ou um oportunista genial? A questão ainda ressoa. Qual a sua interpretação dessa figura enigmática, capaz de polarizar uma nação inteira e influenciar o destino de um império? Compartilhe nos comentários, porque é na pluralidade de visões que a história verdadeiramente ganha vida. A lenda de Rasputin, porém, não morreu com ele. Pelo contrário, sua figura cresceu, transformando-se em um mito. Para alguns, ele se tornou um símbolo da resiliência russa, um homem do povo que desafiou a elite. Para outros, ele permaneceu o demônio, o feiticeiro que corrompeu a pura alma da Rússia e trouxe sua queda. Sua imagem, com seus olhos penetrantes e barba desgrenhada, adornava cartões postais, livros e filmes, muito depois de seu desaparecimento físico. Relatos de sua indestrutibilidade continuaram a ser contados, alimentando a narrativa de um homem quase sobrenatural, alguém que dançou com a morte e a enganou repetidamente antes de finalmente ser levado por ela, não por um único golpe, mas por uma combinação implacável dos elementos e da determinação humana. O corpo de Rasputin, após ser exumado por tropas revolucionárias que temiam que seu túmulo pudesse se tornar um local de peregrinação contra-revolucionária, foi queimado em uma floresta próxima. Suas cinzas, espalhadas ao vento, simbolizavam o fim de uma era e o início de outra, mais brutal e impiedosa. Mas a chama de sua lenda, como um fogo-fato, nunca se apagou. Sua história se tornou um aviso, um conto sobre o perigo do poder não controlado, da fé cega e das consequências imprevisíveis quando o destino de uma nação é manipulado nos corredores escuros de um império em colapso.
A Rússia sem Rasputin não encontrou a paz prometida por seus assassinos. Em vez disso, mergulhou ainda mais fundo na turbulência, culminando na Revolução de Outubro e na ascensão dos bolcheviques. O sangue derramado no Neva foi apenas o primeiro gotejar de uma torrente que engolfaria milhões de vidas e mudaria o curso da história global. O homem que sobreviveu a veneno, balas e a água congelante finalmente sucumbiu a algo mais do que seus agressores físicos. Ele sucumbiu ao peso insuportável da história que ele mesmo, sem intenção, ajudou a moldar. Sua morte não foi o fim de um problema, mas a abertura de um abismo. Mas afinal, era Rasputin um profeta de Deus ou um oportunista genial? A questão ainda ressoa. Qual a sua interpretação dessa figura enigmática, capaz de polarizar uma nação inteira e influenciar o destino de um império? Compartilhe nos comentários, porque é na pluralidade de visões que a história verdadeiramente ganha vida.
A figura de Rasputin permanece um espelho distorcido das ansiedades e esperanças de uma Rússia à beira do precipício. E talvez, no fundo, a história de Rasputin não seja apenas sobre um homem, mas sobre a própria natureza da influência, da fé e da inesgotável busca humana por milagres em tempos de desespero. The Story of Rasputin's Death, a tale of seemingly impossible survival against poison and bullets, culminando in a protracted struggle beneath icy waters, became instantly legendary. It fueled the existing narratives of his mystical, almost supernatural powers, ensuring that even in death he remained a powerful, terrifying figure. His survival against such overwhelming odds and his eventual demise, not by the immediate act of violence but by the elements, solidified his image as an indestructible force, a dark harbinger. Just 2 months after his murder, the February Revolution erupted, sweeping away the monarchy that had been so inextricably linked to Rasputin. The Mad Monk's death, meant to save the empire, instead seemed to accelerate its catastrophic end, a final chilling prophecy from the man who wouldn't die. The myth of Rasputin's indestructibility endures, a stark reminder of how deeply fear and fascination can intertwine. His death wasn't a quick end, but a drawn-out, brutal saga, a testament to his sheer physical resilience, yes, mas also to a desperate, almost insane lengths men will go to eliminate what they perceive as a threat to their world. He was a symbol, enigma e alcando brilhante legenda que, mesmo quando seu coração finalmente gave out na Frozen Neva, continuou a assombrar o coletivo consciência de uma nação. Do you think there are other historical figures whose deaths are shrouded in such layers of legend and brutality? Tell us who we should explore next.